Coming up, the 19th annual Mira Awards. It's where you'll find Indiana's very best in technology and innovation, all in one room. And we were backstage to capture it all. TechPoint CEO Mike Langelier is here with a recap of the star-studded night and insight into the shining stars, including the Tech Company of the Year. Plus, Shift Indy is making government services easier to find, simple to use, and available 24/7. A digital city hall being copied by the likes of Austin and San Francisco is the Corporate Innovator of the Year. And Freight Rover combines two Indiana strong suits, technology and transportation, to create a platform that solves fragmentation in the U.S. trucking industry. And it earned Mira's Best New Tech Startup. Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business.
Stand by for Top of Show with music full. By D1 Sound, sponsored open with music. Stand by camera 3 with Gary. We're out in 5, 4, 3, 2, dissolve, cue Gary.
Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. The largest Mira Awards event in history is now in the books. Some 1,300 tech professionals, entrepreneurs, educators, and political leaders gathered for the 19th edition of TechPoint's Signature Gala, which spotlights the best in tech in Indiana. Over the next 30 minutes, we will showcase some of the very best Indiana startups, scale-ups, and established tech companies and their creators and their roles in fueling unprecedented tech momentum statewide. Well, Indianapolis is home to the largest Salesforce hub outside of its global headquarters in San Francisco. About 75% of the staff work on the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is headquartered in Indianapolis, and grew nearly 40% year over year in 2017. The tech giant added 200 high-wage jobs last year here and celebrated the grand opening of Salesforce Tower. Indianapolis, the tallest building in the state. Salesforce is Tech Company of the Year.
What people don't always see is all of the innovation that's happening right here in Indianapolis. It's really strategic to Salesforce as a whole. We're developing a first-of-its-kind integration with Google, and a lot of that development work is being done here in Indianapolis. We launched, and very innovative to the space, a distributed marketing product. That's being developed here as well. And so, very big year for lots of different reasons, but also, really developing a lot of very cool and innovative products to meet our customers' needs.
As you reflect back on how tech has grown and evolved here in a big way, what is here now certainly wasn't here even just a few years ago.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on just the evolution of technology in Indiana?
Yeah, so another thing people don't always know is that Indianapolis is actually the second largest hub for Salesforce in the world. And so I think when you have a company with the amazing reputation like Salesforce coming and really putting roots somewhere, that starts to pique the interest of a lot of big and small companies to say, there must be something really cool going on there in Indiana. So I think we're seeing that really reflected in a lot of ways. Really reflective of your background. You're from the startup community on through to a big company. I did. So the Mira Awards are really cool for me. I have now been at a company who's won 3 different times: iGo Digital, ExactTarget, and now Salesforce. So it's kind of representative of my career and really a lot of the careers for people at Salesforce right now. We've had a lot of people stay through the ExactTarget acquisition, and really build a career at Salesforce, grow very, much professionally and personally. So I think there are a lot of really neat stories. Well, TechPoint CEO Mike Langelier joins me now with some perspective on some of the winners in the tech movement as well in Indiana. Mike, is always welcome. Thanks, Gary. And congrats on a big event. I want to talk about Salesforce in a minute, but first of all, the event. Last year was big, 900 plus. You get 1,300, packed house, biggest event ever, biggest crowd ever. What does that say about technology in Indiana? The Mira Awards is always a tell every year for the strength and vitality of the ecosystem. And so last year, coming out of last year, we expected 1,000 people. The awards sold out 2 months ahead of time. So we had to expand it and find space for 1,300, which is exciting. What's also exciting, though, is that is not only the attendee volume, but the volume of applications. So we had over 200 applications, which is twice what it was 5 years ago. It's 7 times what it was 10 years ago. And that is always a tell for
how both the quantity of the applications and the strength of the applications give us a sense of how strong the ecosystem is, and to see it continue to build over time is a really, really good, a really, really strong indication. The other thing that's a really strong indication is that when you look at who was helping to sponsor the awards, like we had 3 tech companies, 3 pillar companies in Salesforce, Angie's List, and Infosys that are backing those awards as pillars here, and Ice Miller as also the platinum sponsor, as just these key organizations that are pillars here that are helping to support it and make it possible.
Let's talk about Salesforce. Everybody knows the Salesforce name. A lot of people maybe don't realize 2017 was a huge year for the company. A lot of that innovation, a lot of that activity right here in Indiana.
Yeah, oftentimes people can think, well, Salesforce is so visible, and as a result, this is a no-brainer. But really, 2017 was an exceptional year, as you said. They crossed the Marketing Cloud, which is headquartered here. This is a huge global company, one of the largest enterprise SaaS companies in the world. That Marketing Cloud crossed $1 billion in revenue and grew 40% year over year, which is tremendous growth when you're talking about that scale.
Yeah, I only got about 30 seconds, but to have the name on the top of the state's tallest building be Salesforce.
Yeah. It has been remarkable to see the external attention and validation that has brought. And what I've loved about Salesforce is that they have embraced that role. They've been prominently outspoken, whether that's via social media or participating in events with other companies and attracting other companies. They're willing to embrace that role, both by taking the building and then also playing a prominent marketing presence.
All right, Mike, stick with us. You're going to stay with us for the first half hour with more reactions, so sit tight. And still ahead, Shift Indy. It's really reimagining how citizens connect with local government, applying efficient technology solutions to outdated manual processes. That's why the City of Indianapolis-Marion County Information Services Agency was named Corporate Innovator of the Year. Well, in an age where we can pay our bills, schedule appointments, interact with most businesses on our mobile devices, it is natural government services to follow suit. The City of Indianapolis and Marion County launched its Shift Indy initiative, which began a monumental journey of making city and county government services more accessible, efficient, and available 24/7. Indy's Digital City Hall earned Corporate Innovator of the Year.
So I came into the role as Chief Information Officer in 2016. Timing was perfect.
Right.
Mayor Hogsett's administration had just gotten there, wanted to do something innovative. We talked about just rebranding the website, right? Using the new colors and rebranding it to be Mayor Hogsett's. And instead we thought, it seems like there's a time, this is the time, to take advantage of technology in Indianapolis, and how can we really rethink this as an initiative? And so we took what Mayor Goldsmith originally started with the first website, which was what he called Electronic Town Hall. And we rethought it and called it Digital City Hall. How do we make Digital City Hall the first and foremost in the entire country here in Indianapolis?
As you look at that, the bottom line of the initiative is you want to improve life, if you will, for citizens, but also employees as well. Everyone is engaged and involved in the process.
Absolutely, everyone's involved. So of course, the mission of the City of Indianapolis and Marion County is only there to help the residents and businesses and visitors of Indianapolis. That's what's most important to us. So that's the face, but making those processes run faster also helps those city and county employees. And so our goal was to really look at it from end to end, start to finish. When you start a process, how do we make that work better all the way through the process?
Does a piece of this, being innovative and using technology in local government, kind of tie into that, maybe a building brand that the Indianapolis region is getting with the technology investment, the innovation that's coming here?
It's something we've talked a lot about, especially with the mayor's administration coming in and seeing these huge announcements, right, of tech in Indianapolis, and how do we take advantage of that? And so really it's the partnership we've built with the private sector to do this process and build this project out really involved new young startups, as well as some entities that have been in the City of Indianapolis and Marion County for many years.
Any cities around the country kind of taking note of this initiative?
Absolutely. So we were excited to have interest from Austin, Texas, somewhere we think as a tech innovator in of itself. And then most recently, San Francisco has signed on to use the exact same platform we are and to build that from what we've started with in our pilot.
TechPoint CEO Mike Langelier is back with more perspective. And Mike, I thought that was very interesting. Austin, San Francisco, these high-tech meccas looking to Indianapolis for innovation.
Indeed. This is a category that's about oftentimes companies that aren't thought of as tech companies, but are doing pretty remarkable innovation. Really cool this time to see city government being the one who's taking the lead, and especially for it to be our city, this city, who's taking the lead nationally and setting the example for those places that are seen of as tech hubs.
And when you look at this initiative, Shift Indy, the process was substantial. It was really a big effort.
Yeah, they went through all city agencies, talked to a myriad of business owners to collect requirements on what the service needed to do, collected over 1,000 requirements, they said, and then distilled that down to actually and built out 25 new online services. And one of the prime examples that they speak to is the homestead deduction process. Significantly overhauled that process. It used to be something that you'd have to fill out a bunch of forms, and it would take 5 to 10 business days to be able to get that application turned around by a lot of internal staff. And now they have it down to a very automated, I think it's a 20-minute process. And so in December alone, they processed 4,000 combined applications. And so it's just an example of, again, putting power back into citizens' hands and improving the relationship between the citizen and our city government.
And maybe an example of the diversity of innovation that's happening.
Indeed, indeed. And it's, I think that, as we'll see in some of the other winners, that was a common theme across in the Mira Awards, that we saw tech and ag, tech and logistics, tech and government. And that's something we're going to continue to need to happen for our economy to thrive into the future. All
right, stay right there. We'll be back with another winner in just a minute. Still ahead, Indianapolis-based startup Freight Rover. It's bringing together more than 550,000 for-hire carriers and shippers responsible for more than $10 billion in annual transported goods. Up next, you'll meet the best new tech startup. Well, welcome back to our special coverage of TechPoint's 19th Annual Mira Awards. Well, trucking is the backbone of e-commerce for U.S. companies, moving some 70% of goods nationwide. Indianapolis-based startup Freight Rover is poised to bring together more than 500,000 for-hire carriers and shippers responsible for transporting billions of dollars in goods. The tech company wowed the judges by growing to nearly 30 employees in its first 6 months and raising $9 million. Freight Rover is this year's best new tech startup.
If you think about the market today, it's about 50,000 drivers short right now and growing, and that's expected to continue to double almost every couple of years. So really where we specialize is trying to maximize the capacity that's available by connecting it with the shippers and third-party logistics providers that need to have products in factories and products on the shelves, and helping them find the alternative capacity. It is a very fragmented industry, so you have some very large players, some of which operate here in Indiana, but then you have tons, actually 97% of the capacity that's available are 20 trucks or less. So you have to have some sort of engine that brings that together, and that's where Freight Rover lies.
Yeah, as you look at the your continued growth in the e-commerce space, that would seem to play right into your company's future potential.
When consumers are saying, I want it now, or I want it yesterday, so shippers are having to get extremely creative, and how do they meet that demand? Amazon is continuing to push everyone in that space, and so we've really created technology that brings a lot of integrations together to help maximize the time constraints, the cash constraints, and the capacity constraints that are within the transportation industry.
You've grown very rapidly, 27 employees your first 6 months, raised nearly $10 million in capital. As you look at the opportunity for continued growth, how important is it to be in Indiana, a state that really values distribution and logistics?
We are the crossroads of America, so not only for us being a tech company is this state amazing with the growth that we're seeing in technology, but for the transportation that specializes within this state, from our water ports to our interstates to our warehouses, we rank in the top 10 on multiple facets within the industry, and so it's a great opportunity for Freight Rover to really specialize in what we do, but also to highlight how special Indiana is.
Mike, as you look at the trucking industry, I don't think a lot of people think of that as a very tech-savvy or tech-enabled industry, but here's innovation built right here in Indiana that's really getting to the heart of the industry.
Indeed, as I referenced in the last segment, we saw several businesses that were at the nexus of things that Indiana has historically done well, logistics being one, ag being another, and then our tech industry too. This is a perfect example, one that was a new name for a lot of folks that weren't familiar with this company, but they had remarkable traction. I mean, this category is for a company that really came to market for the first time in 2017. And so to get that kind of traction of hundreds of customers. $9 million in capital raise. As you said, almost 30 people hired to the team. They've got really great trajectory, and it's an interesting market where you have 70% of all the goods that traverse across the country travel by truck. And it's a large market with, I think, about 550,000 for hire carriers that operate very manual processes and fragmented processes. And so they've found a place to apply technology to automate and integrate what's currently a pretty manual process. And it would be really cool to see that nexus of logistics and technology thrive here in Indiana.
And indeed, when you talk about e-commerce, the trucking industry is critical for that business.
Indeed, there's just so much transformation that's happening in that space, and it's happening both through the players that Amazon was referenced before, and the way that that's putting pressure on traditional retailers, and also pressure on logistics. And so you're going to see a lot of shifts that happen in that industry writ large as a result, and we got to make sure that as much of that happens here as possible.
All right, we've got one more company we're going to check out in a minute, Mike. SupplyKick has developed a tech-enabled and analytics-driven approach to buying, selling, and representing third-party products in marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart.com, eBay. Despite operating in a notoriously high-risk market, the fast-growing self-funded company was named Scale Up of the Year. The CEO and founder share what's fueling growth. Well, as online retail rapidly evolves, SupplyKick has developed a successful approach for buying, selling, and representing third-party products on Amazon, eBay, and Walmart.com. Last year, the company nearly doubled its workforce and more than doubled its revenue. SupplyKick predicts it could be a billion-dollar business by the time it reaches its 10th anniversary. Not a shabby goal for this year's Tech Scale-Up of the Year in the $5 to $20 million category.
Amazon's just difficult to navigate, but it's the world's largest e-commerce site. And so it's important to manage your presence there well. And so we help brands do that, and we help them protect their presence there and get the most out of it.
Talk about growing a technology company like yours in Indianapolis, in Indiana, and the benefits that you see of growing tech here in the state.
Yeah, well, there's huge benefits. There's great workforce. I mean, really great team members. We're lucky to have just a fantastic team that we've been working with, being able to grow that very quickly as well. Amazon's a really interesting place for us to be because we're really in this new piece of retail. So as we're growing that, we just have kind of a new piece of the tech ecosystem here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, we talk about that ecosystem, the support system. Both of you are alums of the Orr Fellowship, right? Which is one of the great initiatives in our state. I'd like to hear both of your opinions on that program and how it's representative of growing momentum in the tech space.
Yeah, the Orr Fellowship catapulted my professional career in a way that no other initiative could have. I got to work across all sorts of departments within a company and receive executive mentorship. So I was so much better prepared to run a company and do so effectively because of my experience in the fellowship. It's connected me to employees, to investors, to customers. It's been an invaluable experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think back at my time at Angie's List, which is where I was placed. I was working directly with Bill Osterly, Angie Hicks, Scott Britton. I mean, just some great people to be able to learn from. And now we look at SupplyKick, we have 10 current or former Orr Fellows in the organization now, which is just a testament to kind of the continued leadership that we've been able to see in the organization.
And Mike, when you talk about things that have come together to create this tech momentum, the Orr Fellowship, I know you were an Orr Fellow.
That's right.
Both Josh and Chris were as well. How important is a program like this to this overall process?
It's critically important. It's one of those foundational layers that brings people here. I was originally from Illinois and went to college here in Indiana, and the Orr Fellowship is what brought me here to Indy. And it's the same story for a whole generation of multiple generations of people now. And it helps to form relationships, form friendships, form professional partnerships like this one. And I think we have already seen, we'll continue to see businesses grow as a result.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about SupplyKick. In the e-commerce space, right?
Yeah, this is another intersection place, the intersection of tech and retail. Another area that's getting a lot of pressure. There's a lot of change happening there, and SupplyKick is taking a really interesting approach toward helping these retailers that are struggling to figure out how to best represent their products online and to fulfill those orders and to do it much more effectively. And this is a company that, as you said in the open, has doubled revenue, more than doubled revenue in the past year, doubled workforce. They're in this scale-up category between 5 and 20 million, and they crossed 15 million in revenue, so generating meaningful revenue, and they're doing it on the back of a bootstrapped business that they've self-funded. and they've done it being profitable for 11 of the past 12 quarters. So the last thing about that business that I'll say is there are, during the period of youth and rapid growth, formulating culture is hard to do, and they've done a really good intentional job of doing that.
Mike, thanks for being here. Congratulations on another great Mira Awards.
Thanks,
get rested up. Next year is year 20, right? So it's a big
April
year.
13th.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Thanks very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, Eli Lilly and Company partnering to launch a 5-year, $7 million diabetes prevention and management pilot in 3 underserved neighborhoods. I'll sit down with Lilly CEO Dave Ricks to talk about the initiative and the state of the company. Plus, DMI has created a real-time security app, not only for teachers in schools, but students and parents as well. We'll tell you what that's all about and talk to an Indianapolis high school about it as well. Stay with us.
Stand by D1 Sound, sponsored open with music. Stand by camera 3 with Gary. We're out in 5, 4,
3 seconds.
2, dissolve, cue Gary.
It's time now for the Business of Health, brought to you by Hendricks Regional Health. Where you live shouldn't determine how long you live. That's the message from Eli Lilly and Company, which is launching a pilot program aimed at addressing the high incidence of diabetes in select neighborhoods. The 5-year, $7 million program will focus on 3 Indianapolis neighborhoods that Lilly says have significant health disparities and high rates of diabetes. I sat down with CEO David Ricks to talk about the model, its impact, and the state of the company.
Well, we've been active in diabetes and trying to improve the lives of patients with diabetes for a long time, and we've done a number of global health initiatives outside the U.S., but the Fairbanks study, which really demonstrated the disparity in life expectancy and in diabetes status by zip code, caught our eye. So they showed this analogy with the Monon Trail, that at the top of the Monon Trail, you live life expectancy and quality of life similar to Switzerland and Japan. At the bottom of the Monon Trail, it's like Bangladesh. And of course, Lilly's at the bottom of the trail too. So this really motivated us to work with Eskenazi to put a program like this together.
And this is a neighborhood model, if you will, that typically you have implemented in other places outside of the U.S., in Mexico and India and South Africa and other places.
Correct, yeah. The goal of these global health programs is to find practices and how to organize health care in underserved areas so that patients can get better care, prevent disease if we can, but if not preventable, treat it in a much better way. This is what we're replicating now for the first time in the U.S., this kind of global health program in an underserved neighborhood, and we've picked 3 neighborhoods in downtown Indianapolis.
Talk about basically how the model works, or how this program will work.
Right, well, we're giving a grant to the Fairbanks group here at IUPUI. They're coordinating what is a series of pilots and projects to try different things to improve the health status, specifically the diabetes health status of people who live in these neighborhoods. So it's not going to be just one thing. It's going to be many things, whether it be exercise programs, access to healthy food. These are known contributors to diabetes, or access to health care itself, and that's where Eskenazi can play a big role.
And again, the impact of this initiative, $7 million over 5 years, can be felt throughout the Eskenazi system, but far more broadly than that, perhaps throughout the country.
That's right. Along with our partners, our shared goal is to figure out what can work in this kind of environment, in an urban neighborhood, ethnically diverse, with lower socioeconomic status. If we can find a few common threads that could be spread, we'll publish those, and along with Eskenazi and the IUPUI team, IU Med School, will publish that and really try to propagate those practices as best practices so other people can benefit.
You look at the impact, the devastating impact really of diabetes on families, the human toll, but that also translates into a business toll. Businesses are paying the freight too in places like Indiana where it's such an issue.
Exactly, Gary. You know, as highlighted earlier this week in my speech, the really for Indiana, my view, our view at Lilly is healthcare is sort of our kryptonite. It's the piece of our business environment that's not working. Healthcare costs in Indiana are much higher than they should be, and it's a cost that businesses are bearing. So diabetes is one of the key diseases we need to get after to change that. It's a chronic disease. It's very expensive, more than double the cost per active employee who has diabetes, and it's affectable. It's a lifestyle and diet and exercise set of drivers, we can change those things and reduce the cost of doing business in Indiana. That's good for the economy, and of course, it's good for the people who might be at risk for diabetes.
We're into the second quarter of the year. As you look at the state of Eli Lilly and Company, certainly an iconic company for our state. Give us your take on the state of the company.
State of the company's good. We just announced our first quarter earnings, grew 9% on the top line, mid-30s on the bottom line. That's a strong financial performance. That is impressive, but what's really impressive to me is the quality of that. We're really driving that off a new set of products. 9 products we've launched since the end of 2014. We hope to launch even 6 more in the next 18 months. That's the kind of research and development productivity we haven't seen in our history, and it'd be unprecedented for a company our size. That's driving growth. Those products will last a long time. I think we've got a bright period ahead.
What's key in your view to continued growth, continued success as you look through 2018, but obviously more long-term into the future?
Well, of course, driving those new brands is key for our business. Investing in research, and that's always changing, and it's a challenging area. Its success rates are low, as you know, but we have to keep at that. Human disease knows no boundaries. There's always another problem to solve, and I think the science has really developed in a positive way. We need to recruit and attract great people. We need to invest, put a lot of money at risk to find the next medicine for serious condition like diabetes. We're committed to that. We're spending a lot of money, $5 billion a year on research. We have to continue to do that and do it better and better. Increasingly, we're partnering with other entities, medical schools, but also biotech companies to bring forth those new medicines. That's a new capability for us.
Lilly CEO Dave Ricks, who estimates that some 10,000 residents suffer from diabetes in the 3 targeted neighborhoods in this particular initiative. And we'll be following the program as it develops and certainly have more reports going forward. Well, DMI has created a real-time safety monitoring and communication app that empowers schools to evaluate and act upon emergency situations in really a proactive way. DMI says it's safety in the palm of your hands because it leverages mobile technology to make communicating and responding to emergency situations easier. The technology is adapted from a U.S. government platform used in high-risk situations. The president of the Digital Transformation Solutions Division at DMI, Greg Gallant, and Cathedral High School President Rob Bridges are here now to talk about how it works. And gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Greg, I'll start with you. How did this idea come about at DMI to put this together?
The platform itself is something that DMI has had for the last 2-3 years. After watching the events in Parkland, I took a step back both as a parent and a board member at Cathedral and said, we have to be able to take that platform and bring it to the K-12 situation. And that's what we've done with Endzone.
All right, let's talk about Endzone and how this, how it works, some of the key aspects of the technology.
Yeah, we recognize that most students today have this in their backpack or in their hands in the school situation. We put an app on that phone that uses the geolocation capabilities of your phone and then turns your phone into a situational awareness platform that the school can take advantage of, right? It allows us to do things that are similar to Amber Alerts that we all experience here in the state of Indiana. It then allows the school, if there's an emergency, to then quickly declare that emergency and be able to locate all the students that are on their campus.
Go ahead.
If I'm a student, it allows me to have an SOS button on my phone. So I may individually have an emergency that I need to make the administration aware of. I can hit that SOS button, and the administrators immediately contact me and evaluate the nature of that situation.
Rob, talk about your view, your perception of this technology, and how being proactive is, in your view, such an important piece of the world in which we live these days.
Well, you know, Cathedral has been committed to excellence in all areas, and leading the way in safety is important to us too. But really, it's worse than heartbreaking for a school leader to see the events that have happened at schools, most recently at Parkland. And what bothers me most and what has troubled me is that we're really defensive. We're very proactive, and we put a lot of resources into other areas of safety. But when it comes to schools, we're still kind of doing it the old-fashioned way, and we just kind of wait in place and hope for the best. We know we can do so much better. And when the idea of DMI presenting Endzone to me, where we could be proactive and use our technology to keep our students safe, there's no way we could say anything but yes to this.
Cathedral will be a pilot program, serve as a pilot program for Endzone. Talk about how you envision this being rolled out in the school.
Well, you know, we want to make sure that we're doing it right. We're working very closely with the folks at DMI. We'll have a pilot group of teachers. We have a safety team. Pretty much all teachers could be on the safety team now. Everybody's interested in this. But the safety team will pilot it first. We'll have groups of students to pilot it as well to make sure that we have all the bugs out, and we're doing very well with that. And once we're ready to go, I anticipate in the fall, we'll be ready to have everybody using it.
What's been the initial reaction to folks as they see and hear about this technology?
You know, it's funny that, of course, the teachers want to keep the school very safe. But the reaction has been a little bit unease because they're not sure about the cell phones. Are they going to follow me around all the time? They're going to check what I'm doing on the weekend? And we say we don't have time for that. We're not interested in that. We want to do everything that we can to keep our students safe. And teachers definitely understand that. Yeah, Greg, talk about, too, this another unique aspect of the technology. So teachers, students, ultimately, parents can be engaged as part of this process, right?
Correct. They'll have 4 different levels of participants at the school level: the administrative safety committee group, the teachers, the students, and the parents. Mm-hmm. And so the school, during a situation, whether it's a full-blown emergency or it may be just, hey, there's a water main break on campus, they can notify the various levels the appropriate communication and the actions to take.
All right, DMI InZone, it's using technology to really get at proactively some of the safety issues in our schools today. Greg Gallant from DMI, Rob Bridges at Cathedral High School, thanks very much, and we look forward to having you on again and maybe talking down the road.
Great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Well, a reminder, all of our Eye on Education segments can be found at InsideIndianaBusiness.com, and if you have an interesting story idea or suggestion, please send it to segment producer Tara Twig at tTwig@growindiana.net. Still ahead, our insiders will sound off on some of the week's top stories, but next, for the 7th time in Indianapolis history, the city will host a U.S. Olympic trials. The Indiana Sports Corporation says the 2020 trials could make a huge splash in the city's economy as well. Stay with us. Well, USA Diving making a splash this week by awarding Indianapolis host city status for 3 of its major events, including the 2020 Olympic team trials. Inside Indiana Business reporter Mary Rachel Redmond has the story.
Thanks, Gary. 3 USA Diving events with high implications coming to the Circle City and taking place right here at the newly renovated IU Natatorium. Starting with the USA Diving Senior National Championships in 2019, followed by the 2020 U.S. Olympic team trials that will decide who competes for the United States in the Tokyo Olympics. Then finally in 2021, the USA Diving Junior National Championships.
The support that Indianapolis provides with all the organizations here and the businesses, it makes it a real easy decision. And so that's why we're bringing 3 events here for the next 3 years and excited to do so.
Built in 1982, the Natatorium has played host to 13 Olympic team trials. And in June of 2020, it will be the 7th time USA Diving has held its trials from the Natatorium, something officials say helps put Indianapolis on the global stage.
Not only do we get the benefit of the trials being here, but when you think about the Olympics, generally when they're competing, they're constantly showing footage of when they competed during the trials, and so we get the benefit of a global audience as well. So it's just it's a great extension of a strategy that's been successful for 40 years in Indianapolis, and it's especially unique and important when we have an organization like USA Diving that calls Indy home to continue that partnership.
The number of Olympic level or national championship level events that we will host over the next 4 or 5 years is really mind-numbing. And so I've told the people of Indianapolis, if you're a resident here and you're a sports fan, you better stay put, because the world and the country and the Big Ten and the NCAA are coming to Indianapolis. Basketball, football, diving, Olympic trials. It's all going to be here in Indianapolis, and it's a great thing for our city.
Again, the USA Diving Olympic team trials will take place in 2020, June 13th through the 21st. Reporting from the Natatorium, Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
All right, Mary Rachel, thank you. Well, coming up, our insiders getting warmed up to sound off on tackling the opioids crisis, diabetes, the month of May, and a lot more. There they are in the Inside Indiana Business Social Media Lounge. They'll join me in studio next. Well, each week a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week sounding off on some major players launching initiatives to combat the plague of opioids and diabetes in our state. Also, Gregory and Appel Vice President of Corporate Development Steve Appel, and Indy Chamber Chief Economic Development Officer Maureen Krause. And welcome one and all to the Insiders this week. And we'll start out with some healthcare news, kind of some troubling news on the healthcare front that's been around for a long time in terms of diabetes, such a terrible disease around the globe, and in particular here in Indiana. Big news this week is Lilly, IUPUI, the Fairbanks School of Public Health, announcing an initiative, 5 years, $7 million, to combat this in neighborhoods here in Indianapolis. Maureen, we were talking off camera, another example of various groups coming together to fight important issue.
We're really good at that here, taking public, private, and philanthropic sectors together. We identify issues that need to be solved. This is one that clearly impacts our workforce and our incoming workforce. Yeah. As we all know, talent is a huge issue. We need as much good, healthy talent as we can get. So this is an important example, again, of these three groups, public, private, and philanthropic, working together to solve a problem here. We are great at doing that in this area.
Yeah, and Mike, I think it's interesting to know diabetes obviously is a real focus area for Lilly and has been for many, many decades. They have done this kind of program in a number of other places, not in the U.S., right. In places like South Africa and other places around the globe, now bringing it home, really bringing it home.
Yeah, they're going to take some key learnings from that work in communities in Mexico and India and South Africa, as you mentioned. And one of the things that Lilly's CEO said that I really thought speaks to the work and the reason they do it is he said where you live shouldn't determine how long you live. And so they're going to find those key learnings. And the reality is there's a great health disparity between income levels, and we're facing that here in the community. So I think these three neighborhoods they've chosen, they're going to find some best practices, find a way to scale them, take them across the state and hopefully around the country to address this issue.
Yeah, as you look at an iconic Indiana company like Lilly, really taking some steps right in their own backyard to combat diabetes.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for me was that 17% are at threat in a fairly small area. So I'm hopeful that if they really do get, as they said, some of the best practices, that it can be taken around the country, because the food desert issue and things like that should be something that hopefully can be replicated.
Yeah, interesting too, they had a graphic on the Monon Trail, and from the top of the Monon Trail to the bottom, 14 years in terms of longevity, length of life difference from the top to the bottom based on a number of factors. Opioids obviously continue to be a scourge on America, on many states in this country. Here in Indiana, a lot of efforts, Mike, I know you're very familiar with IU and its Grand Challenges program, and really putting a lot of resources out there. More efforts were announced this week. It's not going to be a short-term thing. It's going to take a while, but do you think Indiana's getting its arms around this issue?
I certainly think so. I mean, Governor Holcomb and his team are doing some very meaningful work here with partners like IU and their Grand Challenges effort. And the research that just came out with the report that, a lot of local, state, federal officials are saying, give us information about what works, because we don't know how to address this. So this report looked at increasing investment in naloxone with the overdose drug reduction there, looking at Good Samaritan laws, looking at drug paraphernalia laws, really arming them with a lot of tools to use both legislatively and health to address this. And then the effort that they also talked about this week with looking at newborns who are born addicted, and the work to do there to provide them with the services they need are critically important.
And Maureen, obviously there's a huge human toll in this situation, but there's also a big business and talent issue related to this as well.
Absolutely. When people look at this area, they see what is the talent pipeline that we can provide, what condition are they in. It's not just what degree they have, but are they going to come to work every day, be able to do that. So it's an issue that needs to be solved. It impacts in some of our communities a significant amount of the workforce population.
I'll give one other thing, which is in Indiana, I happen to actually work with two companies, one medical device, one technology, that are both addressing the opioid issue as well. So I'm happy to say that there's, I think, some innovative solutions coming down the pike as well.
Yeah. Also this week, the week just ending, Small Business Week, and there are nearly 500,000 small businesses, believe it or not, throughout Indiana. Do small businesses get the short end of the stick? Some people will say say we get, small businesses will say we get ignored. We don't get the attention that the big companies get.
Well, I think sometimes on the attention deficit could be there in terms of the big initiatives of a Lilly or things like that. However, I think there's a very good small business climate in the state, and we're a larger small business now, and we're fortunate to work with lots of small business, and the innovation and job creation is really strong. And I think the tech boom in Indianapolis is really helping fuel the small business revolution, and there's a lot more support now, which is great.
When you look at the small business infrastructure in this state, a lot of those businesses have grown and become big businesses, which is a great path for entrepreneurs to understand that we support that here. But the other thing is, when you look at these businesses, great creativity and innovation occurs in small businesses. They're quite nimble. And we have to embrace that and really look for ways to encourage more of that growth here. It's a great career path, whether you're in high school thinking what you want to do, or you're 45 and you've just been laid off, or you want a new career choice. So we do a lot of that support work at the Chamber. But once again, think about where creativity and innovation can come from. Small businesses are very nimble.
Yeah, I think to your point about do they get the short end of the stick, I think one of the things I really like about weeks like this is the awareness, because we all have choices that we make with our own personal dollars, where we spend it, and who we do business with in our companies. And so making sure we're supporting the small business in our communities is an important thing.
All right, a big sector of the economy for Indianapolis is sports. Indianapolis has made a lot of its name on sports over the past 4 decades or so. This week, big news in that Indianapolis will host the 2020 U.S. Olympic team diving trials at the Natatorium, multiple times having hosted that event. And Mike, I'll throw it out to you. Anybody can jump in. But another example, and money was put in to renovate the Natatorium a few years ago. That would seem to be that payoff beginning to happen right now.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of debate back and forth about it. Would that be the right investment to make? If we do it, will people come? And boy, it's proving to be the right investment. Those renovations from 2016 now have not only delivered the Olympic trials in 2020, but also the junior nationals, the senior nationals. So we're seeing that. I think it's going to be exciting to see David Badaya come back, an Indiana guy who is going for, I think, his 5th Olympic Games now in Tokyo. So there'll be a lot of excitement around this.
And Steve, as you look at the competition for these events like this, Indianapolis, I believe, was the very first local sports organizing committee, the Indiana Sports Corporation, in 1979. Now there are literally hundreds, maybe thousands. So the competition for these very intense, but Indianapolis continues to get more than its fair share.
I think so. I mean, we have expanded, so it's not all you hear about from Indianapolis anymore, but certainly we were the amateur sports capital for a while, and now the professional teams are doing well too. So it's great. And I was actually on the planning committee for the last Olympic diving, and it was a lot of fun, and there's an eager fan base out there.
I think the economic impact of the Olympic trials estimated about $2 million. So there's money in there as well. Steve, you mentioned sports. Maureen, we'll talk about the professional teams, the Pacers and the Colts. Talk about the Pacers. Not a lot of people thought the Pacers would get in the playoffs, let alone take the Cavs, and they certainly had more than their share of opportunities to win the whole thing. But anyway, they took the Cavs to 7 games.
So exciting. You look at the national exposure that we get, that our team gets, that our fans get, and that this community gets. That once again, it wasn't expected, so it's a little, maybe a surprise to some people. But I just love all the, I have to say it, free exposure that this whole community
and
gets from something like that.
Some people will debate that a little bit, but the fact that Indianapolis on multiple fronts, in this case with the Pacers, gets that national, that opportunity for national exposure.
And every one of the members of that team are just phenomenal ambassadors for our city and our state. And we have to celebrate that, because there isn't one of them that I wouldn't want to come and do an event or a commercial or talk about what it's like to be here. So, next year we'll go further. We have a great foundation of a team, and I was just thrilled to be watching and seeing all the positive news about the Pacers.
Yeah, the story from the start of the season, to build off what you just said, Maureen, is Herb Simon told Kevin Pritchard, just give the city a team they can be proud of. And boy, did they hit on that, right? We're really proud of the Pacers. And then the story about Victor Oladipo just being right back, making shots, hitting the weight room, just hours after losing that Game 7. So he's committed to lead that team, and he said to Pritchard, we're going to be even better next year. So I wouldn't bet against him.
Creating a lot of anticipation, I think, heading into next year already. Steve, how about the Colts? A big draft, and I think they did well. I mean, they drafted for need. You go, offensive lineman isn't the sexy position, gets all the attention. But I think a lot of people think the Colts position themselves pretty well.
Their general manager seems to have a good plan in place too. And I think the biggest issue was we've been about a year and a half without Andrew Luck, so they drafted 2 big offensive linemen, and that could be a big difference. I'm hopeful.
All right, we are in May in Indianapolis. We all know what that means, the Indianapolis 500, the month of May. Your thoughts? Danica coming back for the final time. What do you think?
I would love, in the year of the woman, it would be great to see Danica win it this year on her way out. That would be a lot of fun.
Maureen, how about the month of May, the importance that this has for Indianapolis?
Well, we part of our job is to travel around the world and to talk to people around the world. Right. This is what people know us for.
Yes, right.
And it really is a great entry point to a conversation. We've talked a little bit about our activity in the motorsports industry, the increasing technology that is happening here and around the world, but people know us for this, and it gives us an open door to talk about everything else, all the other assets we have here. So we're going to embrace it, we're going to entertain there and show off to the world what our community is all about. It's fantastic marketing.
All right, a great way to put a wrap on another edition of The Insiders. Maureen Krause, also Mike Marker, Steve Appel, thank you one and all for joining us, and we'll be right back. And as we wrap up this week, a reminder to subscribe to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, a condensed version of the show, perfect for the ride to work, the airport, or perhaps that grind on the treadmill. The IB podcast is free. Just search for Inside Indiana Business at your podcast page or follow the links at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. Coming up next week, IPL ready to showcase a $600 million natural gas plant. New CEO Craig Jackson will be here to talk about that project and his vision for the utility. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures with support from WFYI Productions.